hopefully Chioma can join us now. Okay. Don't know why it's doing that now. I've sent an invite.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear
Oh,
me?
fantastic. Fantastic.
Apologies. I was trying.
Okay.
Okay. My camera doesn't look good, but we'll just see. I'm here anyway.
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
here.
Yeah, that's a good position to be in. Okay, good.
Okay,
Fantastic. Great. So welcome to Global Sororitas. Can you hear me very well?
Yes, loud and clear. I can hear you.
Fantastic.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
So I'm just going to give you a brief introduction and then we'll just take you from here. So this is part of my maternal health series, mental health series, because it's something I'm very, very passionate about. So today we have Chioma Fanawopo. Right?
That's right.
Yes, I got that right. And she's a mother of two boys, 16 and 19 years old. She's an award-winning, nine, 16 and 9 years old. She's an award-winning and Forbes featured coach with over 18 years of experience in supporting young people and their families. She created a mental health resource for young people and currently writing a book on anti-racism. So we're looking forward to that. We're going to support her on this journey. Fantastic. In addition to this, she's an educator and a wellness practitioner who focuses on promoting positive mental health for the whole family. She's also a mentor to young adults, a speaker, coach, a former school governor, youth mental health first aider, and facilitator. And she's also a trustee of the Girls Brigade Ministries. So my guest today has got years of experience in working with families, with working with young people. And I have asked her to come on because I wanted her to share her own experience and give us an insight into parenting and maternal mental health and how we can get some knowledge and some tips on how to merge the two together and align it. So over to you. If you can just tell those who are listening a little bit about yourself, your experience, and what you do.
Okay, so thank you so much. I mean, just bear with me because I'm recovering from COVID actually. So this past week has
sorry
been.
To hear that.
So I'm so just bear with me, but I'm really glad to be here and just really wanted to share a bit about me. I mean, you've introduced me all, but for a number of years, over a decade or more, done a lot of work supporting children, families. I'm really passionate about maternal mental health because I really think that especially in our community, there's a big stigma around mental health. When we think of mental health, we think of people who are crazy. We think of, but I always say that mental health is actually on a continuum. So we all have good and bad days, and I think the pandemic has really meant that our mental health have been affected in many, many ways. So it's really an important conversation to have, and it's something that I'm passionate about because I say as mothers, we're always the one who are carrying the whole family, so to speak. We're working, we don't stop a lot of times to really look after ourselves. So really, I say to mums, it's like when you think of on the plane, when they give you those instructions, and for those of you who've flown or haven't flown, they usually say, make sure you use your own oxygen mask before you look after that of your child. And so really, when I think of maternal mental health, I really say that's what we need to do, that we need to check in with ourselves. We need to look after ourselves in order to then be able to help those around us. And so you mentioned that I created a mental health resource for young people, and it was and it's a 6-week program that I created. So all of this I need to share more about it because I really don't speak enough about it. But really, I think being a parent can be quite overwhelming. And as I said, during the pandemic has really impacted mental health. But also, you see stories of it around. You see that in, sad cases of children being sadly killed by their parents, and that's the worst part. And I think it's so easy for us to judge when you see that, but actually to know that some parents just felt that they had no support. And I think if there's something that people take away from today, that you're not alone. I want you to know as a parent, as a mom, if you're struggling, please, please ask for help. It's okay not to be okay. It's best that you get help than for you to get to that place where it's so overwhelming and you end up hurting yourself or your children. So really, I say, because when I see those stories, I mean, I saw one today of this little baby, and I don't know if you've seen that. It broke my heart because I thought, gosh, if the parents had gotten support, I mean, I don't know what was going on for the parents, but if they had gotten the support that they needed, then we probably wouldn't be where we are today. And so really just encouraging and saying to parents, check in with yourself, find accountability partners to help support you in your journey. Find a village, because it really does take a village to raise children. So some of your village might be people in your church, but find a non-judgmental space, knowing that where you can get supported. And I think your platform also supports a lot of mothers as well. Is that right, Kiji?
Yes.
So really just trying to signpost and say there is help out there. Don't feel that you can do this on your own. And if you're struggling, please, please, please ask for help, because you're not alone.
Oh, fantastic. So my question to you is why did you decide to go on this path really? Is it a passion that you've always had, or was it through personal experience?
I would say a combination. So through personal experience, but also it became a passion of mine. So for years I've worked with children, families, and I've seen that in our community that there is really not a lot of help. There's a big stigma, like I mentioned at the beginning, when you start to talk about mental health. And also I had my own going through some issues that I went through where I started to feel, especially in the pandemic, we had a family tragedy, or a difficult situation that happened. And so it meant that I had to ask for help. But also, being a youth mental health first aider, there were lots of tips that we had been taught that really helped me. So I was able to use that to help myself. But then I thought, what of parents who don't know this? How do they support themselves? How do I knew what I know as a professional who worked with children and families and in education for over 10 or more years. And yeah, I was feeling this. How about those who didn't have that? And so it really got me on this journey looking to support parents, and showing that you can manage whatever condition. I mean, I've been on antidepressants because again, there's stigma around that because we think, you go on that if you're crazy, or you go on that and you're addicted to it for life. But it was for a season that I needed to manage a really difficult situation that I was going through. And, my doctor was able to wean me up after I think it was 6 months or so, 6 months to a year, and I came off it. But my own personal experience, as well as seeing parents, knowing that it's really difficult because there really isn't a manual out there to support parents. Parenting is hard. Parenting is hard, and I can't, and every parent knows how difficult parenting can be. But at the same time, we don't have to go through this journey alone. And it was through having that support network and getting the help that I needed that helped me to come through the other side. And it's still difficult because, like I mentioned, the pandemic has really meant that, so for instance, last year, at this point, we were entering the third or whatever phase of pandemic it was. And myself and a school nurse friend, we got some funding from the National Lottery, and we started running workshops for parents because we realized that parents were suddenly on their own with their children 24 hours a day. I thought, it started probably the year before, but also when the third lockdown came in, parents were again having to work, having to homeschool. And so we started this 6 weeks workshop where we got parents to really think about mental well-being. We talked about devices because, again, we knew that children and parents were spending a lot of time on devices. We talked about internet safety and stuff like that, but also things like cyberbullying, because we know that's a real thing as well that can lead to mental health issues. But also, when I talked about mental health, that mental health is something that, like I mentioned, is on a continuum. So you have good days, you have bad days. But if we don't seek help, it can spiral out of control. It can get worse. It doesn't get better. When we ignore it, it doesn't get dealt with. But when we deal with it, then it gets better. And I think also just for you to know that you can recover. You know, it's not the end of the world. Just because I always say it's best that you get that help, get better. You know, someone describes it this way as you having, say, a broken limb. You will get help, you go to the doctor. So why is it that when we have issues with mental health, we don't go and get help? And so really realizing that it's, as much as it's difficult, but if we get help, then we can work through those difficult situations and come through to the other side. So yes, my own personal success, as well as things I've seen as a professional, have really inspired me and got me started on this journey.
Fantastic. I love that. What I wanted to ask is how can people access that resource, that mental health resource? How can they access that?
Okay, so the mental health process I've created is not, I've not made it available, but will do. But just wanted to say there is also help out there. So like your local GP. I mean, I know at the moment it is tricky, especially here too. But if you call your GP and you say, I'm really not coping, I need some help, they will either refer you to talking therapy. Sometimes they're quick to sort of push antidepressants, but I always say the first protocol should be talking therapy. And that's why I had counseling. In the end, I did actually end up going privately for it because I wanted cultural competent and I wanted a few other things. But I do say to people, talk to your GP at the first protocol. There are also a few apps out there. So organizations such as the Mental Health Foundation, they have some resources. Also, Mind has resources, but also Young Minds for young people as well. They have resources. Um, Also, there's an NHS app, and I can't remember what it's called, but it does allow you, gives you some strategies that you can use to support your mental health. But also, some of the things I've created in due course, they will be coming out in terms of supporting people. But at the moment, I don't have the resource I've created is not yet available. It will be soon.
Okay.
Looking, yeah, looking at setting up. So really, just signposting to local things that are out there. That the help that parents can get to help them with their mental health.
Fantastic. And you know, you touched on something about creating a village, creating a community, and being part of a community. I totally agree with that. But one thing I do find, and it depends on the community, and it depends on their conditioning as well.
Mm,
Because, you know, you can be part of a community and it could be supportive in other ways, but when you're touching on mental health,
mm,
there tend to be a level of distance or not room for you to be able to fully express yourself. And that's one of the reasons why, for me, it is important that people speak of their own personal experience, because you can speak about, you know, you're a professional, you can tell me all the things, all the tips that I need, what I need to do, you know, all the textbook, you know, ways of relating to people. But if you're not open enough to speak about your own personal experience, I think that in itself does can not allow people to connect with you in a deep way. So I'm so glad that you were able to kind of touch on your own personal experience, and then, you know, we have a better understanding of where you're coming from. So how can we then begin to re-educate some of our members and our community to begin to understand that mental wellness is so vital and is so important? You know, we have the spiritual aspect of, you know, our journey, but then we don't see that the spiritual aspect and the mental aspect is actually one. Because if you're not functioning properly in terms of, you know, how you're thinking, your mind, or you're going through a very, very traumatic experience, and then people expect you to still have this, you know, be on this high spiritually, it does not work. So how can we begin to educate within our community so people can begin to engage in an open and in a vulnerable way?
I think conversations that we're doing, such as this, is really one of the ways to get us started. So, starting to talk about mental health, and the other thing I say as well is mental health. I mean, there's a definition of mental health that I love of health actually. It says it's the UNICEF's definition, and it says it's not the absence of disease. It's not just the absence of disease or just the absence of sickness, but it's also, like you mentioned, the holistic side of health is being well in every area, because you could be well physically, but if you're not well mentally, then you can't function at your peak. And so really what I say to parents is start to become self-aware. So start to find out what's going on for you, because sometimes we get through that phase where we're really quite stressed. And if you're stressed, then you can start to ask yourself those questions. What is causing my stress? Is it my job? Is it the children? What's going on? Rather than just carrying on, take a moment to just stop and reflect. And that's what I had to do, because when I felt, I mentioned that at the start of the pandemic, actually, we went through a difficult circumstance as a family where my marriage broke down, and found myself suddenly parenting alone. I knew that it was too much for me to carry by myself. And that was when I reached out and I approached my GP. I said, hey, and I'd been speaking to her before, but I said, I need some help. And so really the first step is starting to acknowledge what's going on when things are too much, rather than this whole, because I think there's a trope of this strong Black woman that we're strong and we just get, no. And that's why, sadly, a lot of us have a breakdown, because we're trying to carry on, we're trying to carry on by ourselves and go on, but you can't give from an empty cup. I always say you can't give from an empty cup. And like the analogy that I gave at the beginning of putting on your own mask before you put that with your child is so key. So starting to have, and then what you mentioned was really key as well, about you could have a village, but they might not be supported. Then I say they're not your village, because if they're not
Mm-hmm.
supported, really they're not your village. Because if
Mm-hmm.
your village is meant to support you in everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if
Mm-hmm.
they're not, then they're not your village. Then
Mm-hmm.
maybe you need to find a different village, actually. And this might be controversial, but maybe you need to find a different village who are not going to judge you, because actually being a parent, the last thing you need is judgment. And that was the space that we created last year, where it was a non-judgmental space that we could talk about different topics that was close to our heart. We could have a safe space. And I think that's the key, creating that safe space that is non-judgmental, because everyone is struggling. No parent can say, yeah, I've got it all together. I mean, I've been parenting, my son is going to be 17 next year, but I still can't say I know everything there is, because there'll be challenges. You're dealing with human beings, so there'll be changes, there'll be things that are different, and the way you parent one child is different to the way you parent another. So I really say that, that talking through and talking to the right person as well, not just the person that will sort of carry your story, but really finding that space. But there are lots, like I mentioned, organizations out there who are really doing stuff as well. So there's a lady on Facebook, she's a psychotherapist, floating counseling, and I will put a link
Okay.
to her in there. And there are two who run well-being workshops and things, and I'll be running some in the future as well, because but the interesting thing is that sometimes you run it and people don't see a need for it, and this is
Yeah.
where having a conversation is so important, that
Yeah.
we all need this help, we all need this support to help us navigate this space. But also, like I said, loving ourselves as well, I think, is the other thing that I found. Taking time for ourselves. What are we doing for ourselves? Because as I mentioned, as mothers, we carry everybody. Do we take time out for ourselves? Do we take time to, it could be running that bath, it could be giving yourself that new lipstick, or, and I'm not advocating for, excessive spending, but it's taking time out for yourself, taking time to invest in yourself, in your personal development, in your, like I mentioned before, village, taking time to stop and check in. What's really going on? What's going on for yourself? Getting the therapy. So I really, really recommend those things. others start to getting better, because you can get better, you can get help. Because I think that's the other thing that people are afraid of, that once you start, that it spirals out of control. But actually, I've known moms who have been sectioned in the past, and today they're thriving. They're thriving. You know, a mom that I knew, she was sectioned, but she's thriving today. Today she's excelling in her job. So there is hope. There is life after sectioning. There is life after mental. You can, but the key is to start to understand, start to know yourself, start to work through your traumas. Because again, sometimes it's some of the traumas that we might have faced in the past as well, you know, that are affecting us. So really, and they might trigger, things might happen that triggers us, you
Yes.
know, and cause it. So really knowing what the triggers are, knowing yourself, being self-aware, those are some of the tools that can really help us in this journey of mental well-being and mental health as well, and optimum mental health.
Yeah, optimal mental health and having the courage. I was listening to you, and
Yes,
I'm hearing courage to know that, okay, if this group of people or village is not being supportive, having the courage to find a village that is supportive, having the courage to know that it is okay to say I need help, and just embracing the help when you get it, and also understanding that having an antidepressant, you know that can help you through a period of time is okay, you know
that's right.
and understanding that, and also key self-awareness. And that's one of the things, in parenting. Obviously, when I got into parenting, I saw how my mom parented us. I didn't really have parenting classes, and so I just started. I've got this child, and that was it. Let's start this class. And so it was, as well as trying to understand this beautiful soul that has been given to me. Also, I was trying to find myself, because I was evolving and changing, as an individual as well. Because parenting, I do believe, changes you. Because
Exactly.
while you're parenting, you're getting to know you as well. And
Yeah.
so having to understand that, yes, you probably might not be the same person 16, 17 years down the line. And knowing and having that self-awareness to be able to navigate your way through, those personal changes that you're going through as well as an individual. What would you offer? Because I know that you have a coaching program, and how you can help parents as well as help young people. So what would you offer to somebody who is a parent? They go parenting a child, at the same time trying to understand who they are, and then everything kind of is all kind of in this, you know all merged together, and it could be quite confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just coach my coach on there, Faith Ruto. She was just saying, yes, it changes us. That absolutely, that parenting does change us. And I think what I would offer is I would offer. So one of the things that I'm offering at the moment in terms of coaching is offering parents an opportunity to really look at things that. So it might be their parenting style. So really looking at a few weeks of sessions that we work together. So looking at parenting styles, but also things like parenting goals. Because I think sometimes we set goals for our careers, we set goals, but do we actually take time to set goals for our family or parenting? So really looking at that, but also looking at our models of parenting. What model, a bit like you said, you got your child and you just got into it. What model of parenting have we seen? Was it positive? Was it negative? Is it impacting us? Are we trying to parent our children the way we were raised? Because actually, it's so difficult. It's different raising children. You simply cannot raise your children the way your parents raised you.
Mm.
Some of us have had perfect models, but still things have changed. Times have changed. So we simply cannot raise our children the way we were raised. So really looking at those things, what are you doing? What's your parenting journey like? And working out a program of, over about 6 weeks or so, where we really look at that and help you to establish goals and things that come up, but also accountability where we can check in if you're struggling, because really it's not easy. And as we said, there's no manual out there, but really offering some support. Because I've seen a few things in our community of parents, and I'm like, gosh, we do need some help and support out there. So really just saying, yes, there is help and there is support, and you're not on your own. So please reach out, ask for help, and you can come along on this journey of 6 weeks and working together. And there's been some feedback from those parenting journeys saying, wow, I wish I knew this sooner. I wish I had this help and resource out there sooner to help me in my parenting journey. And also then working with whatever the needs you have, really working alongside you. We can have a consultation and then establish what the needs are that you need in your parenting journey. But help is here to support you in that journey.
Fantastic. So I'm going to encourage anyone that watches this after that, you need to follow Chioma Fanawopo. I had to look at it again. You need to follow her. I'm telling you, she's got wealth of knowledge, experience, and she can guide you in the right path and help you on your journey. And so her coaching, you need to follow her. So I want to talk a little bit about your book, if we
Okay.
can talk about it.
Yeah.
So you're writing a book of anti-racism. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. This book has been a while that I've been writing it, but the book was inspired because I started to think of, so I worked in education for like 7 years or so, maybe longer. And in that time, I started to sort of notice certain things about, some people call it and yeah. So really the book, okay, so I'll start again. So the book was actually, I was asked to write this book by a group of youth practitioners. So really the idea was actually how to be an anti-racist practitioner in terms of working alongside youth organizations. But actually now it's now extending to things like schools. Because what we noticed, of course, with the death of George Floyd last year, but actually prior to the death of George Floyd, I started having conversations because I grew up, I was born in Nigeria, but grew up and raised my children in Croydon. And Croydon was very, very diverse. But about 4 years ago, moved out to Bexley and noticed that there really isn't a lot of diversity out here. And so, but what was interesting was I noticed in the primary schools, there really wasn't. And then we had an incident where my younger son was called a racist name. And I remember when we actually took the place at the school, I remember noticing that there was a lack of diversity there. And so I asked the school business manager and I said to her, we've come from a very diverse area. We are used to diversity, but there really isn't diversity here. And she said, oh yeah, there's no racism here. And I thought, okay, there we go. I thought if something happens, I will be the first one here knocking at your doors, because I don't want my son to get to a place where he hates school because of the racism that he might experience. And so when an incident did happen, sure enough, I was at their door knocking and saying, hey, you need to deal with this. And so that got me started on having those conversations. And what was interesting was that whenever I would talk about it, people would be like, oh yeah, we in the UK, we're in a better place, we're in a post-racial world and blah, 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 blah. So, and there was a lot of denial of those conversations. But then in 2019, just before the death of George Floyd, I remember going on an international trip with a colleague. He's grown up here in the UK, same age as me, and he's quite well traveled, so he has a lot of friends internationally. So I was asking him, I said, what, when you think of this whole racism thing, what do you think? So we had a long debate and conversation on this plane as we were flying to Kenya. And he said, oh yeah, in the UK, we're not as bad. And I thought, okay, here is that whole thing again. But then one thing I realized that because of, if you don't have proximity,
Yeah,
you do not understand how it's affecting people. And that was the thing that I realized in talking to him, because I thought he's well traveled, he's got friends, but his lack of proximity means that he doesn't understand. And so when I was asked to write this booklet, I decided to write about the history of racism in the UK. So talking about things like colonization what and the pillaging of resources and all of that, and what that has led to what we have, a lot of people that have migrated to the UK. But then I, in the second part, I'm talking about what it looks like today, because that was the thing I realized, that people thought it still looked like people don't see the no dogs, no blacks, no Irish that was evident in the 60s, in the 70s for people that grew up here, but that it looks different. It's much more overt. It's
Yes.
much more serious. It's much more insidious. So I gave examples of what it looks like today. So in terms of things like, people being mistaken for each other, black MPs being mistaken for each other, footballers being mistaken for each other, or even some people who are completely unrelated. But also the experience that my son experienced in his school here in Bexley, where he was called Black Pooh, which I thought was quite offensive. And just looking at some of those real examples of what it looks like today, things like lack of promotion in companies, being passed by for promotion. And then I look at the things because another thing that got me to start writing about it was when I did my mental health first aid course. And it did say that one of the causes of mental well-being, or lack of mental well-being, can be racism, that racism can trigger. And so my third chapter, I talk about the impact of racism on mental health. And then fourthly, I talk about how can those leaders in organizations do the work to be much more anti-racist in their organization. What steps can they put in place? What can they do? And this actually led me to, so a school here in Bromley has actually asked me if I would come to deliver some training on unconscious bias, so I'll be doing that in March. And so really just starting that conversation, because again, some of us are not confident to have those conversations.
Yeah.
But on spaces like, especially my Twitter page, I had a lot of conversations and debates over, over those topics, because I think I started to see the impact. So of course, when George Floyd happened, for the first time, people started to sit up and say, hey, so it does exist. We're sorry we were in denial. It does exist. But prior to that, in 2019, he's a pastor, but he now runs a youth charity called Power the Fight. He's called Ben Lindsay, and he wrote a book that the church needs to talk about race. And I remember going to his book launch in 2019 and seeing this St. Paul's Cathedral packed out. And he said, actually, when they first were doing the book launch, he didn't think many people were interested in that conversation. But the room was packed out. And it gave me so much hope that actually people were starting to, both a mixture of, communities, people were starting to have the conversation, willing to have the conversation. And it gave me so much hope that, yes, we are starting to have that conversation about race and how it impacts like the church. And, he was talking about himself as a pastor leading the church and his experiences in the church. And so that's what I'm working on at the moment. But also, even at work, I started to challenge work and, ask them questions because I just said, we work in international development. How are we playing our part as well in ensuring that we are aware of these issues? And it led to a few colleagues actually saying to me afterwards, thank you for talking about this, because I didn't know it existed. I didn't even understand it. But since you've been talking about it, like even doing the football last year and all the abuse that a lot of the boys go, I started just, having those conversations and saying, look at the way the boys have been treated. And actually, one of it was even that I, in a way, wondered about the backlash on us myself and my children with what happened with doing the football. And it really, and I was asking someone, and said, is this something that you think about? Of course not, because it doesn't impact you. It doesn't, and that's what I mentioned about proximity. The proximity you are to that issue of, say, racism. If you don't have that proximity, you don't notice that it's a thing, and it's real. So really encouraging. In the past, some of our parents would have said to a lot of people, oh, don't ignore the racism, put your head down and work hard. And I'm still an advocate for that, but there also comes a place. And I think part of that was through my work with young people, really equipping them with skills to speak out. And we noticed this even during the Black Lives Matter movement. It was mainly the people that were, that they were the helm of affairs. They were the ones calling out the injustice. And this is why I love working with young people, because I always say young people and young adults are not like us. They're not waiting for spaces to be made. They are calling out the injustice. They are speaking out, and they are being part of the change. And I always say we have a lot to learn from them, actually. Their courage,
Definitely.
their bravery, and the
Definitely.
way they do things. So we have a lot to learn from them as well.
Fantastic. I can't wait for the book to come out. I really believe that a lot of the schools, they need to hear this message and hearing the message. And I think also the message needs to go out, and that also the message needs to come in as well. And what I mean by that is that, there's when I was growing up, it was more like, like you said, put your head down, study hard, show everyone that you're good in terms of academics, but do not show up as who you are, because you don't want to kind of rock the boat a little bit. And we could not continue to not show up as who we are, our authentic self. If it means you want to have your hair afro, you want to have your hair short, you want to have that kind of work, that kind of hairstyle and go to work, you're still professional, you're still doing your work. And so I think things, you definitely are changing. And also it is important, I'm a believer in this, and this is what I live by, is that you have to position yourself in spaces as well where decisions are being made. We can speak about it all day long, but if we're not showing up at parent governors meeting, and we're not part of the PTA, we're not part of the magistracy, we're not part
That's
of
right.
policies that spaces that are making the policies, then our voices are heard. But when it comes to real action that is going
Yeah,
to change the way we live, we are not in those spaces, and that needs to significantly change. And so
absolutely.
I totally support everything you're doing, and I am grateful that I'm sorry about the experience with COVID and things like that, and I wish you speedy recovery. But I have to tell you that I'm honored by your presence. I'm honored that you came on today. I really appreciate it. And so when I upload our conversation, I'm going to put all your details there and how people can contact you, because I definitely believe that when they do, it will be a transformative experience. So thank you so much. If
Yeah.
anyone has any questions that you wanted to direct to Chioma, you can put it in the comment section, or even put it in the comment section after the video has been uploaded, and I'll kind of forward it to her so she can address it. And if you want to connect with her, I'll put all her details there as well. So thank you everyone for joining today. Thank you, Chioma, for honoring, and I hope that moving forward, there's a lot of things that we can do together. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
No, thank you. Thank you, Katie, for just inviting me here. It's been
Yeah.
a pleasure to speak and share, and about the work, but also about the future things that are coming on, because it's really important we get to a world where everyone is supported and nobody feels like they're on their own.
Mm,
Um, it's a real pleasure to be able to be part of that change and those conversations
yes.
for mental health, but also in terms of anti-racism as well. So thank you for your platform as well. It's a good platform to have. So everyone join the platform. So try to. join the platform and be part of the work that KG is doing as well.
Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.